Hello everyone, my name is Phil Ackland, and for my critical issue in CTE, I chose to focus on gender inequity in STEM education. In particular, the issue which exists within the Kenosha Unified School District, which is the district that I teach in. So first, a little bit about the district. We are the third largest school district in Wisconsin. We are located approximately 45 minutes south of Milwaukee on the southeastern border. We are a huge district comprised of 23 elementary schools, 5 middle schools, 5 high schools, 1 specialty school, and 5 charter schools. So before we dive into the issue, I think it's first important to discuss exactly what STEM is. I think it's fair to say that everyone watching this video will know what what the acronym stands for: science, technology, engineering, mathematics. But what you might not fully understand is exactly why we use this acronym. What exactly makes all these individual components special, and how do they relate to one another? So to discuss this, I have a brief video. So though we have, I'm sure everyone's heard about poor achievement in areas relating to science and mathematics, but what STEM really stands for is basically skills which are vital within the current country that we live in, within the 21st century. So before I go on, I want to make brief reference to the handout that you were provided. Instead of actually focusing on every single one of the components, I decided to just put in things that I felt would be of benefit to you, including the data collection methods that I used, analysis of this data, both within KUSD, and also comparing this data to national trends. And then on the second page, I also included strategies that you can use to solve this issue. And these strategies are all focused on the local level. So as per the requirements, the sections of this presentation will include a background of the issue, the impact this issue has had on career and technical education, the data that I collected and analysis of this data, strategies that you can use for solving this issue, as well as my conclusion and also issues that are needed to be considered. So I think that in order to fully understand the current issue of gender inequity in STEM education, we need to discuss the historic background. So in early colonial America, female education was viewed as unnecessary. Women were also typically viewed as being needed within the home while the men went out and worked. This began to change as in the late 1800s, females began to play a larger and larger role within the labor force. For example, in 1870, female workers accounted for a total of 14% of the labor force. Despite the fact that they represented a pretty significant portion of the labor market, people still viewed in general that their contribution to the national production was somewhat insignificant. And these types of employments that they took were often low paying in areas such as textile and food industries. Going into the 1900s, female education at the time was largely viewed as an extension of the home, as illustrated by the photograph on the lower left. Females were often taught in areas such as family and consumer science, teaching things that would help them within the home, such as interior decorating, foods, cooking, sewing, things like that. While if you look at the photograph on the lower right, boys were often taught things such as trades, manufacturing, agricultural concepts, and so on. And what perpetuated this kind of stereotypical role of men and females was the Smith and Hughes Act of 1970. So despite this act being great for CTE as it created federal and state partnerships for vocational education programs, this act also reinforced gender stereotypes because it promoted domestic programs for girls and trade and agricultural programs for boys. So though there has been steps towards change throughout the 1900s, including the women's rights movement, the American feminist movement, and then pieces of legislation such as the Title IX of the Education Amendments. And this title prohibited sexual discrimination within education programs. There's other legislative measures such as the Education Amendments of 1974, which is called the Women's Educational Equality Act of 1974, and this act provided provisions for financial incentives to states to create programs which promoted gender equity. Another piece of legislation was the amended Carl D. Perkins Vocational Education Act in 1976, which allocated 8.5% of Perkins funding for single mothers and homemakers, as well as 3.5% of funding towards eliminating sexual bias and stereotyping in education programs. Despite these measures, there has been little change. As stated by the National Women's Law Center, more than 30 years after Congress outlawed sex discrimination in education, and this is in reference to the Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, the gender divide in career and technical education has narrowed barely at all. So it's still, there still exists a large gap. So how does this all relate to STEM? Well, traditionally, career and technical education, at least in the male-dominated component of it, has included things like manufacturing and construction, things like that. And a lot of the fields that we're talking about are now considered STEM fields. So trends have repeated themselves. History has repeated itself. Old habits definitely die hard. So according to the U.S. Department of Commerce, STEM jobs have grown at a rate 3 times faster than non-STEM jobs. And these rates are only expected to continue. Despite the fact that STEM is growing, according to the U.S. Department of Education in 2009 and 10, females accounted for only 21.1% of those enrolled in STEM at the secondary level. And these enrollment trends can actually be seen on your handout when you look on the second page on Table 3. On that same table, you can also see that fields such as education and training are actually dominated by females. So it kind of shows that we are kind of repeating the historical trends and still segregating based on gender. So this has been brought to light on the national level. Here's a quote by President Barack Obama, which he stated in February 2013. "One of the things that I really strongly believe in is that we need to have more girls interested in math, science, and engineering. We've got half the population that is way underrepresented in those fields, and that means that we've got a whole bunch of talent that is not being encouraged." Now, generally, when anyone from the White House or at the federal level discuss STEM, they always just focus on science and mathematics. They forget about technology and engineering. So what exactly, how exactly does STEM relate to CTE? Well, I would argue that STEM is simply a component of CTE, because technology and engineering are taught exclusively under this field of study. To agree with me on this is a statement by the Association for Career and Technical Education 2009, where they stated, "CTE programs offer students a deeper understanding of STEM career pathways in order to facilitate student transitions into these areas, build interest in STEM and STEM-related careers by making math and science content more relevant and tangible to students through integration, and help grow the STEM workforce pipeline by encouraging more students from underrepresented populations to enter these career fields." So STEM really is just a subcategory of CTE. And according to the U.S. Department of Education, despite the importance of CTE and STEM, females account for only 21% of STEM enrollments. And this is again in reference to that same chart on your handout in Table 3. But to combat this, recent Perkins requirements have stated that states have to allocate between $60,000 and $150,000 of funds to prepare individuals for non-traditional fields. So this is in reference to both minority groups as well as female groups. And to show specifically that they are also referencing females, they have a core indicator which requires the reporting of underrepresented gender group participation that leads to employment. So, within CTE, are girls college and career ready? Well, let's look at educational trends. So here we see a graph showing the degrees that are conferred to females. As you can see, females account for the majority of all degrees earned, where they have 62% of associate's degrees, 57.4% of bachelor degrees, and so on. So females account for the majority of degrees. But despite this, in 2008 and 2009, females earned only 31% of all STEM degrees and certification. So despite the fact that they have the majority of the degrees, they account for a very, very small percentage of all STEM degrees. So that really shows the extent of the issue. And this doesn't stop just with education, it goes on into employment. According to the U.S. Census Bureau in 2013, 7.2 million people were employed in STEM occupations, which accounts for a total of 6% of the total workforce. Of this, women accounted for only 26% of those employed in STEM jobs. So yes, this is a big issue. But STEM is definitely important. It is growing. According to National Science Board, science and engineering jobs have grown 3.3% a year between 1960 and 2011, compared to only 1.5% of the rest of the workforce. So it is a field which is constantly growing. And also unemployment rates are pretty low, because in 2010 it was reported that college graduates in science was 4.3% for unemployment, and the unemployment rate for engineering was 5.1%. And this is much lower than the national average of 9%. And also these jobs pay better. This is just one example brought to attention by the National Coalition for Women and Girls in Education. They stated that a woman working as a surveying technician, a non-traditional field for women, can earn on average an annual wage of $63,000, while a woman working as an administrative assistant, a traditional field for women, will earn an average annual wage of just $32,000. Now, granted, this is just one example, but generally speaking, those fields considered traditional for women pay less than those fields deemed traditional for men. So to gain a better understanding of exactly the extent of the issue and the reasons for it within the Kenosha Unified School District, I administered 2 surveys, one of which was sent to all the engineering teachers in the district, and another was given to females directly within my school, which is Tremper High School. So let's look at the first survey sent out to all the teachers via Google, one of the Google Forms application. I submitted the form to a total of 11 teachers, of which 9 responded. We have a total of 4 high schools which currently have technology and engineering courses, and out of those 4, every single teacher responded in 3 of the high schools. So the 2 that were not represented were Indian Trail High School. Teachers that work there were at Indian Trail, and because of this, I have not included Indian Trail within the graphs. So the questions that I asked them were, what school do you teach at? How many students do you have in your tech ed courses? Of these students, how many are girls? From your past experience, are these enrollment trends common? Regarding the last question, 100% said that yes, these low enrollment trends are common. So here is a graph of the data that I collected regarding female enrollment. As you can see, in Tremper High School, out of 381 students enrolled in technology and engineering courses, only 30 were female. This is not unusual because you can see the same enrollment trends at all the other schools, where we have 310 total at Bradford with 16 female, and 507 at Lakeview total with only 127 being female. And the last one just shows all of these added together. So within KUSD, females account for only 14.4% of the total enrollment in technology and engineering courses. This is actually a little bit lower than the national average, which is shown on your handout in Table 3. So to gain a better understanding of exactly why female enrollment was so low, I administered another survey which I gave out to 68 females within family and consumer science courses at Tremper High School. I shouldn't have said KUSD, it's just at Tremper. So the questions that I asked were, what courses have you taken in the technology department at Tremper? If you have taken few to no courses in the technology department at Tremper, what reasons do you have for not enrolling? Why do you think that female enrollment in technology education courses are so low? And do you feel that there are some classes better suited for boys and some classes better suited for girls? If so, give an example of a class for girls, an example of a class for boys. It was almost unanimous that the respondents stated that the reasons for such low enrollment was that girls were just simply not interested. What I also found interesting was the response to the last question was split about half and half. For about half the females stated that yes, indeed, there are classes better suited for girls, and the other half stated yes, there are classes better suited for boys. So a large component of this issue is based on female attitudes towards tech ed courses. So what can you do to address this issue? What are some of the strategies that can be used? So there are strategies on a national level, but for the context of this presentation, I'm only focusing on what you can do at the local level. And all this is taken from a article written by Donna Milgram, who is the executive director and founder of the Institute for Women in Trades, Technology, and Science, and she outlined a few key strategies to use for recruiting girls into STEM. So the recommendations include: have female role models. It's fair to say that role models play a significant part in a student's self-efficacy, their ability to see themselves within that career. And more often than not, females are only exposed to more traditional roles for women. So they may see a teacher and want to emulate them, or they may see someone in the medical profession and they want to emulate them. But it's important for us to also show them role models within STEM fields of study. And here's a quote by a published psychologist, Keklis and Chetta and Countryman, who states that the role models help combat stereotyped images and also communicate information about the work and the steps needed to prepare for a career in science. So having female role models is very important. And you can do this through providing pictures of females in your presentations, posters. If you have a guest speaker, try to get females. So whenever you can do to try to expose females to positive female role models would be a benefit. Another recommendation is to reach out to the counselors. Counselors play a significant role in preparing students for their future careers. So it's important that they understand exactly the extent of the issue and that they become active members of change in addressing it. Here's another quote from published psychologists, Miwi and Neumeier. School counselors have to be cognizant of the role of self-efficacy and learning experiences in shaping high school student career interests and choices, as findings in this study illustrate that learning experiences and self-efficacy are the two critical factors influencing high school students' career development. So it's important for us to reach out and create an open channel of communication with our counselors. Another one, which I just think is common knowledge, be sure to provide our female students with personal encouragement. Let them know that a profession in STEM is a possibility, and encourage them to seek out such things. And finally, we have to try to appeal to female interest in STEM. So it's been found that men and women learn in different ways. They have different learning styles, and exactly what appeals to them can vary. So for example, boys are often excited about technology. They're interested in the coolness factor, while girls are often excited by seeing the relevance in the concepts that are being taught. So where a boy might just be content, manipulating that technology, the girls need to be shown exactly why they're learning it and how they can use that technology to better the world. So within the context of a classroom, just structuring the way you present concepts in a different way can actually create a positive impact on female attitudes towards STEM. So there are further issues which compound this problem and contribute to it. And one of those is a lack of emphasis on CTE within many school districts. So it's common for budgetary issues to lead to elimination of CTE programs. And a part of this reason is because administrators might not fully understand the purpose of CTE. They may think and they may feel that CTE is something that is somewhat expendable. And though administrators will always understand exactly what STEM is, they may not view CTE as necessarily a component of it. And also, there is an issue of a lack of STEM teachers. Currently, within my district, KUSD, there is 2 posted positions for technology and engineering teachers. This is in contrast to last year, where there was 11 job openings for technology and engineering teachers alone. And they didn't necessarily post all 11, they basically only posted the ones in the highest demand. So there has been an extreme need for technology and engineering teachers. And because of this great demand, they're starting now to shut down programs. And when we do this, we're really limiting our students and not really giving them a comprehensive education in STEM. And that isn't specific to girls, that's specific to all students. So I think that we've definitely gotten down to it and realized that this is definitely an issue that needs to be addressed. I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and I wish everyone else the best of luck with yours.